They told the queen her daughter was dead, not missing, not captured, dead. The words echoed through the crystal chamber like a slow poison. The war council stood in silence, afraid to breathe. No one dared to meet the queen's eyes. She didn't scream, she didn't fall. She simply sat there, frozen. For the first time in centuries, Queen Aelith of Vyrexia felt something she had never allowed herself to feel. Helplessness. The war with the Car Dominion had already taken half her empire. Entire star systems burned. Worlds that once sang with life now floated silent and broken. But none of that compared to this. Her daughter, Princess Serial, had volunteered to lead the evacuation fleet on the Outer Rim. A diplomatic mission, they said, low risk. A lie. The last transmission showed Serial's flagship surrounded, shields collapsing, stars turning red with plasma fire. Then nothing. The council spoke carefully. Your Radiance, there were no escape signatures. Aelith closed her eyes. In Vyrexian culture, a queen was not allowed to mourn publicly. Emotion was seen as weakness. A ruler must be iron. So she nodded once. Declare her fallen, she said, her voice calm, too calm. Begin the rites. The council bowed and left. Only when the chamber doors sealed did the queen finally exhale. And the sound that escaped her throat was not a cry. It was a breaking. Years passed. The war ended in a fragile ceasefire, borders redrawn in blood, peace written by survivors, not victors. Queen Aelith ruled on, stronger, colder. She never spoke her daughter's name again, but every night alone in her private chambers she would stand before a single hologram, Serial, smiling. Unarmored, alive. Then one day the sensors screamed. An unknown fleet had breached Vyrexian space, not car, not allied, human, primitive by galactic standards, aggressive designs. Battle-scarred hulls, the queen was summoned to the war chamber immediately. Humans, she said softly, they are centuries from matching us. The admiral hesitated. They are leading something, your Radiance. The main display activated, and the room went silent. At the center of the fleet flew a ship unlike any other. Vyrexian design, royal markings, old. Modified, reforged with human steel and weapons. And standing on its bridge projected in full resolution was Princess Serial. Older, scarred, eyes hardened by war. Beside her stood a tall human warrior, armor scratched and blackened, one hand resting protectively near her. The queen felt the world tilt. No, she whispered. Her daughter raised her head and looked directly into the camera, into her mother's eyes. Mother, Serial said, her voice was steady, not begging, not afraid. We are requesting permission to enter the system. The queen could not move. The council erupted in chaos. It's a deception, a clone, a psychological weapon, but Aelith saw something they didn't, the way Serial stood, the subtle tilt of her head. Only a Vyrexian royal was trained to carry herself like that. Only her daughter. Who is the human? The queen asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Serial glanced at him. This, she said, is Commander Ethan Cross. The human stepped forward. He removed his helmet, scarred face, tired eyes, and then, shockingly, he knelt, not as a conqueror, not as an equal. But in respect, I did not come to threaten your empire, he said. I came to return your daughter. Silence. The queen stood slowly. Her hands trembled just once. You were declared dead, she said. Serial's jaw tightened. I should have been, she replied, but the humans found me. The queen's eyes shifted back to the man. And you taught her to fight, Aelith said. Ethan met her gaze without flinching. She taught me, he answered. Something ancient stirred in the queen's chest. Hope, fear. And a realization far more dangerous than war. Her daughter had not just survived. She had changed. And whatever bond she shared with this human had the power to reshape the galaxy. The queen dismissed the council. Every advisor, every general, every guard. The war chamber doors sealed shut with a sound that echoed like a heartbeat. Now there were only 3 beings connected across the void. A mother, a daughter, and the human who stood between 2 worlds. Queen Aelith walked closer to the projection. Up close, the details hurt more. The scars on Serial's face, the faint limp in her stance. The way her royal armor had been replaced with something practical, human. "You were lost for 7 cycles," the queen said softly. "I buried you," Sariel swallowed. "I know." That single word cracked something inside the queen, not anger, not blame. Grief finally allowed to breathe. "What did they do to you?" Aelith asked. Sariel didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at Ethan, not for permission, for grounding. He nodded slightly. That was when the queen understood. This wasn't command, this was trust. "They found me drifting," Sariel said at last. "Life support failing, armor cracked. I was unconscious." The hologram shifted memory footage, a small human ship, emergency lights, hands pulling her from wreckage, rough hands, careful hands, human hands. "I woke up surrounded by strangers," Sariel continued. "They didn't know what I was, only that I was alive." The queen's voice trembled. "And they didn't kill you," Ethan spoke quietly. "We don't kill the wounded," Sariel's eyes softened. "They didn't treat me like a prize," she said, "or a weapon or a monster," she hesitated. "They treated me like a person." The word felt strange in her mouth, but real. The queen felt a sharp pain in her chest. Virexians were raised for duty, for strength, for sacrifice. Affection was earned. Humanity, it seemed, gave it freely. "They hid me," Sariel said, "fed me, protected me." Her gaze lingered on Ethan. "When my wounds reopened, he stayed awake for 3 nights. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "It was nothing." Sariel turned to him sharply. "It was everything." The queen watched this exchange in silence. She noticed things, how Sariel's breathing slowed near him, how Ethan instinctively angled himself between Sariel and perceived threats, even now. This was not alliance. This was attachment. "You trained with them," the queen said. Sariel nodded. "I learned how humans fight when they're outmatched." Ethan spoke again. "We don't rely on power," he said. "We rely on each other." That sentence struck harder than any weapon. Sariel stepped closer to the projection field. "Mother, when they realized who I was, they offered to return me." The queen's eyes widened. "And you refused." "Yes," the word fell heavy. "I wasn't ready," Sariel said. "I wasn't the same person who left." Her voice broke. "And I didn't want to leave him." Silence. The queen stared at the human, at the soldier who had sheltered her daughter, protected her, changed her. "Why?" Aelith asked him. Ethan didn't hesitate. "Because she asked me to stay alive," he said. "And because I couldn't imagine abandoning her." Not duty, not politics, choice. The queen felt something unfamiliar, gratitude tangled with fear. "What do you want from us?" she asked. Ethan inhaled slowly. "Nothing," he said. "We didn't come to demand." Sariel took his hand, a deliberate act, public, unhidden. "We came to come home," she said. The queen's composure shattered. Her shoulders trembled. She pressed a hand against her chest, where grief had lived too long. "You look at him," she whispered almost to herself, "the way I once looked at your father." Sariel smiled through tears. "I know." The queen straightened. Her voice regained strength, but not coldness. "Open the gates," she commanded. The chamber systems responded instantly. "For both of them." Ethan blinked. "You're allowing me entry." Aelith met his gaze. "You carried my daughter through hell," she said. "You stood when she fell." She paused. "That makes you under my protection." Sariel exhaled a breath she'd been holding for years. The human fleet began moving forward, slowly, peacefully. And for the first time since the war, Virexian space did not feel hostile. It felt hopeful. As the connection faded, Sariel whispered, "I'm coming home, Mother." The queen replied, voice breaking freely now, "I know, my child," but deep within her mind. One truth echoed louder than all others. This human had not just saved her daughter. He had changed the future of her empire. The gates of Virexia Prime opened, not with celebration, not with cheers, but with silence. A silence so heavy it pressed against the hull of the human ship like judgment. Ethan stood at the viewport, armor sealed, hands steady. Sariel stood beside him. Her fingers trembled. Not from fear of battle, from fear of being seen. "They're watching," Ethan said quietly. Sariel nodded. "The council never stops." The landing platform was vast, polished black stone, glowing veins of energy beneath its surface. Rows of Vyerxian guards stood motionless. Their spears were ceremonial. Their eyes were not. At the center stood Queen Aelith. Behind her the Council of Nine. Serial's breath caught. "They never came when I was crowned," she whispered. "But they came for this." Ethan leaned slightly closer. "Whatever happens," he said, "I'm here." She looked at him, not like a princess, like someone holding onto the last solid thing in a shifting world. The ship touched down. The ramp lowered. Ethan stepped forward first, a human walking onto sacred alien ground. The murmurs began immediately. A predator, a weapon, a weakness. The queen raised one hand. Silence fell instantly. "Present yourselves," she commanded. Serial stepped forward. "I am Serial Aelith," she said, voice steady despite the storm inside her. "Daughter of the queen, survivor of the Karos War." The council bowed, slowly, reluctantly. Then their eyes shifted. "To Ethan, and you," one counselor hissed. "What are you doing here, human?" Ethan met their gaze. "I escorted her home." A ripple of anger spread. "That is not your place." Ethan didn't argue. "I know." Another counselor leaned forward, eyes glowing faintly. "You allowed a human to touch royal blood," she said to the queen, "to train her. Influence her." "She returned changed," another added. "Softened." Serial flinched. Ethan clenched his fists. Queen Aelith stepped forward. "My daughter returned alive," she said coldly. "Which is more than you accomplished." The council recoiled, but they did not retreat. "This bond is dangerous," the eldest counselor said. "Humans form attachments too quickly." Ethan spoke before Serial could stop him. "And you abandon each other too easily." Gasps echoed. Weapons shifted. The air felt one heartbeat away from violence. Serial turned sharply. "Enough!" Her voice cut through the tension like steel. "You speak of danger," she said, "but none of you came looking for me." Silence. "I was dying in space," she continued. "Bleeding alone." She pointed to Ethan. "He stayed." Her voice cracked. "He stayed when everyone else let me go." The queen watched her daughter, not as a ruler, as a mother seeing truth she could no longer deny. "You would choose him," a counselor sneered, "over your own people?" Serial shook her head. "I choose who stood beside me," she said. "And I will not apologize for surviving." Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. She was defending him in front of her entire species, at risk of everything. Queen Aelith raised her staff. "Enough," her voice carried finality. "The human will remain," she declared, "as my guest." The council erupted. "You cannot." "I can," she snapped. "And I will." She turned to Ethan. "You will stay close," she said quietly. "Some will see you as symbol." She paused. "Others as a target." Ethan nodded once. "I'm used to that." As the council dispersed, Serial's strength finally faltered. Her shoulders sagged. Ethan stepped closer instinctively. She leaned into him for just a second, barely visible. But the queen saw it, and she understood. Later in the quiet halls of the palace, Serial whispered, "They hate what we represent." Ethan answered softly. "Then we're doing something right," she smiled weakly. Then asked the question she'd been afraid to voice. "If they force you to leave, will you go?" Ethan didn't hesitate. No, and far above the palace, hidden sensors activated. A new signal was detected, an enemy who had been watching, waiting. The war was not over, it was only changing shape. The palace never truly slept. It only pretended to. Soft lights pulsed through the crystalline corridors, casting long shadows that moved even when no one walked. Ethan noticed it immediately. Too quiet, too controlled, like a battlefield moments before the first shot. Serial walked beside him, her posture calm, regal, but her pulse told another story. "You feel it too," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "Someone's positioning." They turned a corner. That's when the air shifted, not sound, not movement, intent. Ethan reacted before thought. He grabbed Serial and pulled her back. A blade of condensed energy sliced through the space where her throat had been a second earlier. The wall behind them screamed as molten crystal exploded outward. "DOWN!" Ethan shoved her to the floor and rolled over her, armor flaring alive. The corridor erupted, 3 attackers uncloaked. Council sigils burned on their armor, not soldiers, enforcers. "They came for you," Sariel whispered, eyes wide. "No," Ethan said grimly. "They came for us." The first enforcer lunged, fast. Precise, Ethan met him head-on. Metal screamed against energy as Ethan slammed his forearm into the alien's chest, driving him into the wall hard enough to shatter crystal. The second attacker aimed at Sariel. That was the mistake. Ethan moved like something unleashed. No rage, no hesitation, pure disciplined violence. He crossed the distance in 2 strides and struck. Once the enforcer dropped, unmoving, the third hesitated just for a second, long enough. Sariel rose, eyes blazing violet, her hand lifted, energy bent. The enforcer screamed as gravity folded him into the floor. Silence returned. Heavy, final, Sariel's hands shook. Ethan turned to her immediately. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. Then looked at him, really looked. Blood, alien and human, spattered his armor. His breathing was steady, controlled. But his eyes, they were still scanning, still guarding. "They tried to kill you," she said. "They failed," he replied. "That's not what I meant." Guards flooded the corridor moments later. Queen Aelith arrived last. Her gaze swept the destruction. The bodies then locked onto Ethan standing protectively in front of her daughter. "This was the council," Sariel said quietly. The Queen's jaw tightened. "I know." Later in the medical wing, Ethan sat while a drone sealed a shallow cut on his arm. Sariel stood across from him, too still. "You didn't hesitate," she said. "They were going to kill you." "That's not why," she frowned. "Then why?" Ethan met her eyes. "Because you were behind me." Something broke in her then, not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet collapse. She crossed the room and hugged him, not like royalty, not like a warrior, like someone who almost lost the one person who made the universe feel less hostile. Ethan froze for half a heartbeat, then his arms wrapped around her. Careful, protective, real. "I was raised to believe bonds make us weak," she whispered. He rested his forehead against hers. "They make us choose." Across the palace, the Queen stood alone, watching security footage, replaying the moment Ethan stepped into the blade's path. Her claws tightened around her staff. "A human," she murmured, "willing to die for my child." Her expression hardened. "The council has gone too far." Deep beneath the palace, hidden chambers activated, ancient protocols awakened. If the council wanted blood, they would learn what humans did when pushed. And somewhere in the stars, a signal changed course. A human fleet, not invited, but coming. The Queen did not sleep that cycle. She stood alone in the war chamber, a cathedral of stone and starlight where only rulers were permitted to enter. Before her, a hologram flickered, footage of Ethan. Shield raised, body turned, blade missing Sariel's throat by less than a breath. Aelith closed her eyes. She had buried daughters before. She would not bury this one. "Seal the chamber," she commanded. The walls responded, ancient glyphs ignited. No council ears could hear what was said next. "Bring me the human." Ethan entered moments later, not escorted, not restrained. That alone told him everything. He stopped at the center of the chamber and removed his helmet. Respect. Not submission. "You placed yourself between my daughter and death," the Queen said. "Yes," without hesitation. "Yes." Silence stretched. Then, why? Ethan didn't answer immediately. He chose honesty over safety. "Because if someone wants her dead," he said quietly, "they have to go through me first." Aelith studied him, not as an alien, not as a subject, as a mother. As a ruler, as a species that had underestimated humanity. "Do you know what the council calls your world?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "A death world. They believe your kind survives by accident." Her eyes sharpened. "Convince me otherwise." Ethan stepped forward just one pace. "I didn't survive by accident," he said. "I survived by choice, discipline, loyalty." He met her gaze. "And if your people are targeted, then so are mine." That was the moment. The galaxy shifted. Queen Aelith turned toward the ancient console. Her claw pressed into living crystal. A command no queen had spoken in centuries left her lips. Activate Covenant Protocol. The chamber trembled. Stars rearranged. Hidden fleets stirred. Serial watched from the doorway, her breath caught. "You're choosing them," she whispered. The queen didn't turn. "I am choosing survival." Later, on the palace balcony, Serial stood beside Ethan, staring at the stars. "The council will call you a traitor," she said. "They already do," Ethan replied. She smiled faintly, then grew serious. "My mother just tied our fate to yours," Ethan exhaled slowly. "Then I'll make sure it was the right call." She looked at him, not as a symbol, not as a warrior, but as the man who didn't run. "You don't belong to us," she said softly. "No," he agreed, "but I'm not leaving." A distant rumble rolled through space. Serial's eyes widened. "What was that?" Ethan tilted his head. "A familiar frequency. Human. Reinforcements," he said. High above the planet, reality folded. Human warships emerged from hyperspace, not attacking, not hiding, holding position. The council panicked. Emergency sessions erupted. Accusations flew. "A human fleet inside sovereign space. They dare. This is provocation." Queen Aelith's transmission cut through them all. Calm, deadly, final. "You sent assassins after my daughter," she said. "Now you will speak to her protectors." Serial watched the broadcast. Her hands trembled. "I never wanted war." Ethan stood beside her. "Neither did we." He looked at her. "But we're good at ending it." She reached for his hand, didn't let go. For the first time, she understood humanity wasn't dangerous because of weapons. They were dangerous because when they chose someone, they stayed. Far across the stars, the council made a fatal decision. They would strike first. And this time they would not miss. The first strike did not come with a warning. It came disguised as diplomacy. A council envoy ship entered orbit under a white signal banner. Ancient law. Unbreakable tradition. Even humans respected it. Queen Aelith allowed the vessel passage, against her general's advice, against Ethan's instincts. "They want to talk," Serial said, watching the tactical display. Ethan didn't like the stillness. "People who want to talk," he said quietly, "don't load strike cannons." The alien vessel docked. No weapons scans triggered. Too clean, too perfect. Inside the reception hall, the council's emissary bowed, tall, ivory-skinned, multiple eyes reflecting false humility. "We regret the misunderstandings," the emissary said smoothly. "The council seeks peace." Queen Aelith did not move. "Peace does not arrive armed," she replied. The emissary smiled and activated a beacon. Reality tore open. 6 council warships dropped out of folded space inside planetary defense range. That alone was a declaration of war. Alarms screamed. Guards surged forward. Too late, the emissary's body convulsed. Bioimplants detonated. The explosion tore through the hall. Ethan moved before thought. He tackled Serial behind a fallen pillar as fire swallowed the chamber. Stone vaporized. Energy scorched air. Queen Aelith stood unmoving in the blast wave. Her shield flared once, then cracked. Outside, the sky ignited. Council ships opened fire, not at defenses, not at military zones, at cities. "They're targeting civilians," Serial screamed. Ethan's jaw clenched. "Of course they are." Human fleet commanders didn't wait for permission. They didn't ask for approval. They responded. "Human Task Force Orion," Ethan barked into his comm. "Rules of engagement." A pause, then a human voice. "Civilian threat confirmed." Another pause. "Rules changed." Human ships surged forward, not flashy, not theatrical, precise. Council cruisers vanished in controlled detonations. Human rail cannons punched through shields like paper. Missile swarms ignored countermeasures. No wasted shots. No mercy. Serial watched the tactical feed in horror. "They're dismantling them." Ethan didn't celebrate. "They're preventing a second strike." Then it happened. A Council Dread frigate broke through the defense screen. One shot, planetfall trajectory, its target the Palace District. "Impact in 30 seconds, someone shouted. Serial froze. That district held no military value, only families, only history. Ethan looked at the trajectory, then at his suit's status, then at Serial. "No," she said instantly. "You can't," he activated his thrusters. "I won't outrun it," he said calmly, "but I can redirect it." Her hands grabbed his armor. "You'll die." He met her eyes, soft, certain. "Someone has to stand in the way." Queen Aelith turned. Her voice cracked for the first time in centuries. "Human," Ethan saluted, not to a queen, to a mother he launched. A single human figure streaking into the sky. Against a warship, against physics, against fate, human fleet screamed warnings. "Abort, trajectory impossible. You won't survive re-entry." Ethan ignored them. He latched onto the dread frigate's hull, planted charges, redirected thrusters. Burned his suit beyond safety limits. The ship veered just enough. The explosion lit the atmosphere like a second sun. Serial collapsed, screaming. Her mother caught her before she hit the floor. Debris rained, the city stood, the palace stood, but Ethan did not return. Silence spread across the battlefield. Human ships stopped firing. Council forces retreated. Serial stared at the empty sky. "No," she whispered, again, "no." Queen Aelith closed her eyes. Her voice carried across every channel. "This war is no longer political," she said. "It is personal." Far from the planet in the wreckage field, a damaged human suit drifted. Power flickering, life signs weak but present, Ethan's eyes opened, barely. And he whispered, "Worth it." They found him drifting 3 hours later, not because scanners picked him up, because Queen Aelith ordered the fleet to search manually, every fragment, every shadow. Every silent piece of debris. A human recovery pilot saw the suit first, cracked, burned, barely holding atmosphere. "Life signs detected," the pilot whispered. "By all stars, he's alive." The word spread faster than light, across ships, across species, across a battlefield gone still. When Ethan was brought aboard the medical carrier, the silence inside the bay felt sacred. Human medics moved fast. Alien healers followed, uncertain, reverent. Serial stood at the threshold, frozen. Afraid to breathe, Queen Aelith placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "He lives," she said softly, not as a ruler, as a mother who had almost lost another child. Inside the chamber, Ethan lay unmoving. Skin burned, armor fused, heartbeat irregular but stubborn. A human medic shook his head slowly. "He shouldn't have survived this," an alien healer answered quietly. "He did not survive." They paused. "He endured." Serial stepped forward. She ignored the warnings, ignored the protocols. She took his hand. It was cold, too cold. Her voice trembled. "You said someone had to stand in the way," she whispered. "You didn't say it had to be you." His fingers twitched, barely enough. Her breath broke. Queen Aelith turned away, not to hide weakness, but to honor it. 3 days passed. The war did not. Council fleets regrouped beyond the system. Broadcasts flooded the void. Human aggression, alien manipulation, false narratives layered on lies, but something had changed. Independent systems began to speak. Merchant clans, outer colonies. Even species that once feared humans, they had seen the footage. One human, one ship, one choice. "This is not conquest," one broadcast declared. "This is sacrifice." Ethan woke on the 4th day. Not dramatically, no gasping, just a quiet inhale. The first thing he saw was unfamiliar light, soft, bioluminescent, alien. Serial was asleep beside him, her head resting near his arm. Armor removed, vulnerable, he tried to move. Pain answered. "Don't," a voice said gently. Queen Aelith stood nearby, not armored, not crowned, just present. "You diverted a dread frigate with your body," she said. "You may rest now." Ethan swallowed. City, safe, civilians, alive. Only then did his eyes close again, satisfied. When Serial woke and saw him watching her, she laughed, then cried, then hugged him too hard. "You're an idiot," she said into his shoulder. He smiled faintly. Professionally, the bond between them changed in that moment. No longer alliance, no longer duty, something forged where words fail. Outside the medbay, Queen Aelith summoned the War Council. Her voice carried steel. "The Council has crossed a line beyond treaties," she said. They fired on children, Silence answered. We will respond, she continued. But not as conquerors, she looked at the human delegates. We will respond as guardians, human Admiral Reyes nodded once. Then we fight smart, plans unfolded, not of invasion, but of exposure. Supply lines, truth networks, council hypocrisy dragged into the open. The galaxy began to tilt, not toward war, toward choice. Ethan watched fleet movements from his recovery bed. You're turning them against themselves, he murmured. Queen Aelith smiled. You taught us how. He looked at Serial, at her steady presence, at the world that had almost lost him. Then let's finish this, he said. Far away in the council's inner chambers, fear replaced arrogance. They are not afraid to die, a counselor hissed. They are afraid to let others die instead. And the galaxy understood something new. Humans do not seek war, but when war demands a price, they pay it personally. The council made a mistake. Not a tactical one, not a military one, a psychological one. They assumed humans would celebrate survival. They assumed aliens would retreat in gratitude. They assumed fear still worked. Instead, the galaxy began to watch. Independent relays started broadcasting uncensored footage. The dread frigate exploding mid-orbit. The human interceptor colliding by choice. Serial dragging wounded civilians through fire. And then Ethan, floating, broken, unyielding. Across 1,000 worlds, the same question echoed. Why would someone do that for strangers? The council responded the only way it knew how. With authority, with threats, with declarations. They labeled Ethan a war criminal, declared Serial an accomplice. Named Queen Aelith a traitor to galactic order. The words rang hollow, because the people had already seen the truth. On a mining moon near the fringe, workers shut down operations. On a trade nexus, merchant fleets delayed council shipments. On 3 core worlds, junior officers refused fire commands. Fear didn't vanish, it changed sides. Ethan insisted on standing during the broadcast, even with cracked ribs, even with damaged muscle. Sit, Serial said softly. He shook his head. People need to see me stand. The message was short. No speeches, no rage. I'm not a hero, Ethan said, voice rough but steady. I didn't stop that ship because I'm brave. Pause. I stopped it because someone had to. Silence stretched. Across stars, across species. We're not here to rule you, he continued. We're here to stop anyone who thinks lives are numbers. He glanced at Serial, at Queen Aelith. At the mixed species crew behind him. If that makes us enemies, then we'll stand anyway. The transmission ended. No anthem, no symbols, just a human breathing through pain. The effect was immediate and unstoppable. 2 council-aligned fleets defected within hours, not loudly, quietly, they simply didn't show up. A border system opened its gates to refugees without clearance. An alien news collective leaked council execution orders. The lie cracked. Queen Aelith watched the reports in silence. Then she turned to Ethan. You have changed the rules, she said. He frowned. I didn't mean to, she smiled faintly. That is how real change happens. Serial received a priority alert. Her expression hardened. They're moving, she said. Council vanguard, full strength. The room went still. They'll strike where it hurts, Admiral Reyes said. Civilian sectors. Mixed populations. Queen Aelith straightened. Then did something no monarch had done in recorded history. She knelt, not in submission, in declaration. To every world listening, she said, voice carried live. We do not claim superiority, she rose. We claim responsibility. Orders went out. Human-alien task forces deployed together, no flags. No species markings, only coordination. Ethan watched ships launch. This is bigger than me now, he said quietly. Serial met his eyes. It always was. As the fleets moved, the council broadcast one final threat. Return the human, the chancellor demanded. Or we will erase your homeworlds one by one. Queen Aelith's reply was immediate, cold, measured. You tried that once, she said. You failed. Behind her, Ethan stood, still injured, still human. And this time, she continued, you will learn something worse than defeat. Pause. You will learn irrelevance. Across the void, the council's command chamber fell silent. They had prepared for resistance. They had prepared for rebellion. They had not prepared for unity. And for the first time in 1,000 cycles, the council realized they were no longer the center of the galaxy. The council did not retreat. They adapted. If they could not crush unity with fleets, they would poison it with doubt. Encrypted signals began spreading across the galaxy. Old footage, half-truths, carefully edited lies. Images of human cities burning but without context. Alien worlds destroyed but without cause. The narrative was simple, dangerously simple. This is what happens when humans lead. Some worlds hesitated. Some commanders paused. Fear crept back in not as terror but uncertainty. And uncertainty was always the Council's favorite weapon. Serial felt it first. Not in strategy meetings, not in battle, in silence, messages she sent unanswered. Allies who once responded instantly now delayed. Ethan noticed. You feel it, he said quietly. She nodded. They're afraid of becoming the next example. He exhaled slowly. Then I shouldn't be at the center anymore. Serial turned sharply. No, they're using me, he continued. My face. My story. They're using fear of humans, she snapped. You stepping away won't fix that. He looked at her, not angry, just tired. Then I'll give them something else to fear. The next council strike came without warning. No fleets, no announcements. A humanitarian convoy, human-alien relief ships marked neutral, unarmed. Destroyed in transit. No survivors. The galaxy froze. The council blamed pirates. No one believed them. Ethan watched the wreckage footage in silence, then stood. Pain flared. He didn't care. They crossed the line, he said. Queen Aelith's voice was heavy. They wanted us to respond with rage. He shook his head. No, they wanted us to respond at all. A long pause. Then Ethan did something no human officer had done before. He resigned his command, publicly, live. I will not be used as a symbol of war, he said. I will act as a shield. The galaxy leaned in. I am entering council space, he continued. Alone, Serial's breath caught. No, she whispered. Ethan turned to her. I have to, Queen Aelith stared. You will not survive, he smiled faintly. Then they'll have to look at what they killed. The transmission ended. Chaos erupted. No ship will reach you in time. They'll execute you. They'll erase you. Ethan simply walked. Toward a small craft. Unarmed, unmarked, Serial followed, grabbed his arm. Her voice broke. You don't get to choose this alone. He met her gaze, soft, human. I'm choosing it for you. Tears burned in her eyes. She pressed her forehead to his, a gesture neither species shared until now. If they take you, she whispered, I will tear the council apart. He rested his brow against hers. I know. The craft launched, one human into enemy space. The council received him 3 hours later. Alive, bruised, still standing. Chains were unnecessary. They wanted him visible, vulnerable. The chancellor approached. Cold eyes, smiling mouth. You've come to beg, the chancellor said. Ethan looked up, blood on his lip, fire in his eyes. I came to remind you, he said quietly. What happens when you push humans too far? The chamber went silent. Outside, the galaxy held its breath. Serial stood on the bridge of her flagship. Hands shaking, orders ready, fleets aligned. If they harm him, she said, voice steady but eyes burning, we end this. Queen Aelith placed a hand on her shoulder. They already have. Inside the council chamber, the chancellor leaned close. You think your sacrifice will unite them? You are only one life. Ethan smiled, slow, certain. Humans have a saying, he replied. The lights flickered, sensors screamed, something massive entered orbit. One life can start a war. The council's monitors lit up, every defected fleet. Every allied world, every human-alien task force, all waiting. Ethan stood straighter, chains rattling. And this one, he said softly, already has. The council chamber had never been quiet before. It was built for noise, for argument, for dominance. Now it was silent, not because of fear. Because of realization. Ethan stood in the center, chains still on his wrists. Blood dried on his temple, yet every screen around the chamber showed the same thing. Human alien fleets not attacking. Not threatening, waiting, the Chancellor swallowed. This is extortion, Ethan shook his head slowly. No. This is accountability. Outside the chamber, the Council's capital world trembled, not from weapons, but from gravity shifts as Allied ships entered stable orbit. Perfect formation. Perfect discipline. No chaos, no rage, just certainty. Serial's voice cut through every channel at once. Calm, controlled, deadly. This is Fleet Marshal Serial of the Unified Defense Accord. The galaxy listened. You erased worlds, she continued. You silenced species, her eyes burned. But today you will answer. Queen Aelith appeared beside her on the transmission. We do not seek conquest, the Queen said. We seek truth. The Chancellor laughed nervously. You think you've won because one human stood bravely? Ethan lifted his head. No, he said. You lost because you taught us something, the Chancellor sneered. And what is that? Ethan met his gaze. That unity scares tyrants more than weapons ever could. The council chamber doors opened, not forced, not breached, opened. Delegates from worlds long thought extinct walked in, species erased from records, survivors, witnesses, the lies unraveled, publicly, irreversibly. The council tried to speak. No one listened. One by one, member worlds disconnected, treaties dissolved, votes withdrawn. The council, once absolute, became irrelevant in real time. The Chancellor screamed, "You'll regret this." The galaxy needs order, Serial answered. No, it needs trust. Ethan felt the chains loosen. Metal fell to the floor. A council guard, alien, trembling, had unlocked them. I'm done following monsters, the guard whispered. Ethan nodded. Good. The council's power collapsed without a single shot fired. No massacre, no burning capitals, just exposure. Hours later, Ethan stood on the landing platform. The same small craft, now surrounded by allies. Serial ran to him, didn't care who watched, didn't care who judged. She wrapped her arms around him. Held him like she was afraid he might disappear. You idiot, she whispered, voice breaking. You could have died, he smiled weakly. Still here. Queen Aelith approached, her posture royal. Her expression soft. You changed the course of the galaxy, she said. Ethan shook his head. No, he looked at Serial, at the ships, at the mixed crews laughing, crying, embracing. We just reminded it what it was supposed to be. Days later, a new charter was signed, not ruled by one species, not enforced by fear, built on cooperation, shared defense, mutual consequence. Humans were offered leadership. They declined. We don't need to rule, Ethan said. We just need a seat and a voice. Serial stood beside him, her hand in his, no hesitation. The galaxy watched. And for the first time, it didn't fear humanity. It respected them. As their ship prepared to leave orbit, Serial leaned against the viewport. Where do humans go now? She asked. Ethan thought for a moment, then smiled. Same place we've always gone, he said. Where someone needs help, she smiled back, a real one, unguarded, the stars stretched, the ship jumped. And across the galaxy, a new story spread. Not of conquest, not of domination, but of a species that stood alone so no one else had to. They expected obedience. Humans delivered consequences.